Thank you for coming. Toxic.
Hello.
Considered a key figure of the graffiti movement in the 1980s. Toxic famously traveled with Jean-Michel to Los Angeles for his first show at Gagosian Gallery in 1983, along with visual and hip-hop artist Ramel Z. While there, they dubbed themselves the Hollywood Africans as a social and political statement to counter the stereotypical portrayals of Black Americans on screen. The trio is memorialized in two of Jean-Michel's paintings, one of which, Hollywood Africans in front of the Chinese Theater with Footprints of Movie Stars, 1983, is featured in King Pleasure exhibition. Please welcome Toxic, who is a renowned graffiti artist, and he has moved his art from the walls to canvas and continues to have shows today.
That was my son, Joseph. Just like Hi, baby. First of all, before we get into...
Wow. Yes. Do you want to touch my stone?
I want to touch your stone. Where is it? Let's do it.
Thank you, man.
You all are in for such a treat. We have done quite a few of these panel discussions, and this one is so...
Thank you, man.
They're all amazing, and this one is feels very different. This is a... What is this?
It's green calcium.
I thought it was a goddamn... Is it green cow? Is that what? Okay.
Stress and healing.
That's right.
There
you go,
I need
sir.
it in my
there
pocket.
You go. Okay.
Give me some of that.
Lee Quiñones. Lee rose to prominence in the 70s for invigorating the New York City street art movement, where he created huge murals of graffiti art across entire subway cars. Quiñones' murals would later inspire another fellow artist, Keith Haring, to paint his now iconic Crack is Whack in 1986 wall in Harlem River Park in New York. Quiñones is also known for his starring role in the classic 1983 hip-hop film, You Can Clap Now, Wild Style. Which is widely considered hip-hop's first motion picture. Yes. The film was voted one of the top 10 rock and roll movies of all time by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and includes appearances by such seminal figures as Fab Five Freddy, Lady Pink, and Grandmaster Flash. And I just want to say that what's so beautiful about this particular conversation is the fact that so we've been hanging out for about a day, right?
We started hanging out back in Paris, but...
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah.
This is true. But we're gonna what you're gonna witness is a conversation for us that is not as much a conversation about Jean-Michel Basquiat. And it's more a conversation for Jeanine and I with friends of Jean-Michel, our brother. Yes. So we all went out to dinner last night and we had the opportunity to sit down as two little sisters and have a conversation with these dudes that hung out with our brother, and it felt different. So, so really excited about this. Jeanine.
Yeah, just to add to that, Lisane and I created this exhibition wanting to add the layer of Jean-Michel and his family. And to move forward with that, we also wanted to bridge friendship. And, we couldn't have chosen two better representations of that. Just speaking with them and last night and kind of getting an idea of how much they respected Jean-Michel. And in all honesty, it felt more than friends. They felt like family. And so that is why we're so thrilled to have them here today. So thank you. Thank you, guys.
So we're just gonna have a conversation. You're gonna get to bear witness to it. And
Okay. So I have a question. If either one of you can, or both of you can tell us, what was your first initial meeting of Jean-Michel? Do you remember that moment?
Okay. Well, I had missed the opening of the Roxy's on Friday night because I was doing some other stuff.
Roxy is a dance
It was a club. It was a
in New
club
York
in the
City.
Bronx, and no, in Manhattan, in 18th Street. Yeah. And I was just doing some other stuff. And A1 came back. He said, "Man, you missed this really crazy party, but we can go tonight, Saturday." And I said, "Okay, let's go." And I went down there, and we were just on the dance floor, and I'm standing next to some dude. And I actually, can I do this? Or
You
you
can
get
do
in
it.
trouble for saying what I'm gonna say? So I rolled up like tumbleweed because I came from the Bronx, So we had. So that's what we used to call it. It's like tumbleweed, like full of seeds and shit. You're smoking this,
That was when weed had seeds.
like straight up Jiffy Pop. You're like smoking the joint. It's like pop, pop, pop. It was like space rocks before you had space rocks.
That's right.
And I tend to joke to get past not doing this because I'm very asocial, So I joke a lot. And when you grow up in a place like 138th Street in the South Bronx, as I did, we laugh about stuff, but we don't laugh about stuff. So like I'm dead up serious, But you have to read through that bullshit.
You can
You're
say
good.
bullshit.
You're good.
So I'm like straight up, as we say back home, I'm like up and down, left and right.
Yeah.
Hold my position steady. You know what I mean? I don't play around. So I pass a joint to a dude who's dancing next to me, and he passed me like, I thought I was smoking like Hawaiian punch or something. Just like, I was like, I never smoked it. I was choking, I was coughing. I was bent over on the dance floor, and he goes, "Hey man, you write graffiti?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, cool." And I was like, "You just tried to kill me." So that's how I met Jean, And we just were dancing together on the dance floor, talking and stuff. And he just said, "Here's my number. I'm having a party. Come to my house." And I was like, whoa. And someone said, "You know who he is?" And I said, "No, I don't." I was like, "That's Jean-Michel." I was like, "Okay, he's real cool." And I showed up at the party like the next week, and it was crazy because it was on the 6 train. So I'm in the Bronx, so I could hop the 6 train because I didn't pay.
New York stories.
New York story straight up. And I jumped over the turnstile. I got on the 6 train. So it was like 138th Street down to Spring Street. I got out, I turned the corner, and I saw like limousines outside, bouncers, and I see Jean, and he goes, "Let Shorty in." And I go, "Whoa." And I just walked in, and he's like, bottle of champagne and a bag of blessings. And he said, "Have a good time." And I was like, whoa.
Wow.
Yeah. And
What year is this?
this is like 81, 82.
And how old were you?
I was
You were
actually
too young, but
I was
how old were you?
actually, when we were out here doing the Hollywood Africans, when he did the show with Larry Gagosian, I spent most of my time in bathrooms because I wasn't old enough to have drinks, so everybody would just bring me rum and cokes in the bathroom. But I had great times because I actually got to hang out with like Robert De Niro and Jack Nicholson in the bathroom at Mr. Chow's. And I had all the goodies with me. I don't know. I was just kind of like sitting there like going, like, where are we? And I was like Tom Famous Fat Burgers and then go to Venice Beach. And I was at the other place eating chickens and waffles.
Here? So Lee.
Yeah.
Just tell us their story.
Wow. So I just did the math yesterday after we had spoken.
Okay.
And I actually met Jean when he was 18 years old. And we were both 18. But it was early in 1979. And we, by chance, were sharing a studio with Fred Brathwaite at the time, otherwise known as Fat Five Freddy, down on Canal Street on the west side. And Fred and I were preparing for our first show in Rome, Italy, of graffiti
I have
based.
the catalog.
You have the catalog?
I have the
Keep that
catalog.
one. That's a good one. That's a good one. And we just vibed. He just kind of like he bum rushed the party that was being thrown, which was called the Canal Zone because it was on the bottom of Canal Street.
Jean-Michel did?
Jean-Michel, broke into the party somehow.
Really?
Yeah. I remember he had a like a blonde golden mohawk and sleeveless shirt on. And I was like, who is this guy? And he was just kind of shy, kind of like hanging around the corners, but kind of like moving around, sort of like social butterflying. And we kind of like just all hung out that night. I was with this girl that I was in love with at that time, so I didn't really stay that long. I wish I would have. Who knows what happened in that party, but it was an iconic party. There's Michael Hallman that introduced Fred and I to Stan Pescott, who owned the loft, and was throwing this party. And Jean just got past the velvet ropes somehow and made his way up to the 5th floor and kind of partying. From there on, he kind of like laid his head there a few nights to sleep because I think he was just running from sofa to sofa. And we were painting there, Fred and I. I lived right up, I lived less than a mile and a half away on the other side of Chinatown. And so I was going down there every day preparing paintings for the show. And Jean was there creating his first Xerox postcard pieces along with Jennifer Stein.
Is that the night where he wrote Samo on the wall
Yeah,
and announced himself?
we all discovered that he was the guy,
Okay.
one of the guys in that whole Samo collaborative. And I really didn't know how much he was laying the work, him and Al Diaz early on, but I wasn't really watching the streets. I was painting subways, so profusely. So to me, the streets were a little bit more kind of tame than what I was dealing with on the subways. But it was a great natural, a great natural sort of meshing of the gears. Because this movement is really about community and murals are about community. And this movement is built on murals. It's basically creating murals about your existence. And I think that's what was special about that moment and how we met. We were destined to meet like that.
See, I'm learning a whole bunch of stuff because, like,
We all are.
when I was riding on the trains, like, these guys were anonymous. Like, you saw what they were doing, but they didn't have faces. And when, I thought Lee was like this killer dude, like from the Lower East Side, and we were like, don't touch the wall because they'll kill you. And it's Lee's neighborhood. Don't tag anywhere. And when I met him, I was like, man, this dude is cool, like, yo, but like everyone else, it was a really weird moment to go to transition. Do you understand that, Mr. Deitch? Do you understand that, Mr. Deitch? How we
Jeffrey
did that,
Deitch.
Mr. Deitch. You know what I'm talking about. All right, we good. But Jeffrey's peoples. Give you peoples.
Jeffrey Deitch.
Jeffrey Deitch
Good
is
people.
peoples.
Absolutely amazing people.
I actually was in that show at the Mocha, but I wasn't mentioned in the catalog, but my painting was hanging on the walls. We'll
Are
talk
you
about
starting
that.
from the stage? We talked about this.
I'm so sorry.
Anyway,
this
okay.
is like,
So now let's talk about that 80s scene.
I'm so sorry.
Tori
Bad man.
and Lee, take us to that time in the late 70s and the 80s. Give us an idea of what New York looked like and
No one
what that
knew
was.
who this dude was. So that's why we were really crazy. He did Wild Style and he's up there. Well, I did the Crip. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, he did all the drawings and somebody else painted them, right? Was that? Yeah, well, so I was kind of like, Lee's better than that. It's like, so the Wild Style people, I was like, okay, Lee, I know. But
Well, Wild Style was later on in the 80s.
yeah, so we
81,
got to
82.
like I was like trying to find out who this dude was my whole life. Like it was like where's Waldo? And then he pops up on a screen and you're like, that's him, you know? And I was like, that's the guy, you know, Lee, you know? But for us, it's, you know, I'm like a big fan, so he knows that. So I don't fan anybody, but if it wasn't for this dude, I would not be painting. A lot of us wouldn't exist right now. This whole 50 years of hip hop and this is like enough respect to the elders and shit.
For
man.
sure.
And it's like, yeah.
So Lee, tell us, give us a history lesson, sir.
He knows.
Wow. I mean,
He was there before me.
Lee,
Yeah.
Lee, give us a
well,
history lesson.
I at the tender age of 13, I ventured into the subway tunnels thinking that if I painted once, for some reason I would become part of the club. And the way I looked at things is that I saw all these incredible colors and attitudes on the faces of these trains going by me at a very early age, and wondering who was that, why was that, when and how. And, you know, just thinking, if you could just think about a young person thinking that a dog is a baby horse. You know, like it was things like that I thought, oh, wow, yeah. So if you paint your name once on a train, that's it. You're famous. You're part of the crew. And then I was told, no, Lee, this is one of 10,000, maybe 20,000 times that you're going to have to deal with this situation. So that was probably one of the most frightening things I heard. But then I knew that I was part of a community. And that community was building up in a very dystopian New York at that time. It was buck wild. I've seen many things. I've hung out with many checkered past figures, from Chinatown to Little Italy to, you know, the projects. And the thing that saved my life was the rails, the third rail. And it was because there was a community of painters there trying to create a persona, self-agency, self-worth, people of all colors from all different walks of life that were not only trying to outdo each other, because it's a very competitive town, you know, all props to LA. You know, New York is it's pretty rough and tough, and you have to have thick skin. And down there you had to. So the graffiti movement was it encompassed so many different attitudes and ambitions. But there was ambition. That was the beautiful thing about it. That there was ambition, anticipation, and dreaming. And so that within a span of 3 years, maybe less, from, I would say, well, I mean, just from
the trains to the galleries and the shows.
Well, no, the cryptic tags and the, you know, sort of like the more primitive tags, it became into these masterpieces in less than 3 years. And then you had these masterpieces that became these whole cars, whole subway cars, 52 feet long, 7 feet high. And that's what drove me. I was like, I want to change the narrative here. And I wasn't alone, but I was really determined that this was the art movement of the era. So I think it was that very special inflection moment that in 79, 1980, where all these wheels finally meshed and dots got connected, that made, you know, we were still being shunned, you know, we were still being thrown to the back of the bus. We were still being called the vandals responsible for all the irresponsibilities of the city, you know, but we were determined to get past all that noise and create our blocks, and sometimes not being nice to each other in the sandbox, as they say, you know. But it was a very special time, and it, you know, movements that are incredibly, I mean, where they're embraced now, were very controversial then. So, and that's okay, because sometimes difficulty and struggle creates a push forward.
Amen.
So, yeah.
So both of you, if you can both answer, what made you take your work from these train cars and put them on canvas?
For myself, I asked someone, I forget who, I think I spoke to Bear, like the elders, and I said, what generation, because they were trying to label us. They were like, oh, you're third generation graffiti artists. And Bear was like, no, you're like 10th generation graffiti artists. And I was like, whoa. So then I had to look back and I was like, these guys started writing in like 69. So in 1983, every 6 months, there was a new generation. Like Lee just said, it was so fast. It was just like, wow. So when partially because Jean said to me one day, he said, hey man, are you gonna go get arrested painting a train or do you wanna sell a painting? And I said, well, what's the difference? He goes, you could go to jail or you could get paid. And I said, and I was like 14 years old, so I was kind of like, getting paid sounds pretty cool right now. And it wasn't that, because my connection is to Lee and what I came from writing on the trains and stuff like that. But it happened for me at a moment where there was this interest from the galleries. Like, you know, I was like 16 years old. I was 15 years old. So I was already hanging out with Jean for about a year. And I get propositioned by like the Sidney Janis Gallery, who signed Picasso, the first show with Mondrian, the first show with Marisol, George Segal. And I have Sidney Janis offer me a lifetime contract, and I'm like 16 years old. I was like the youngest person to sign with a major gallery. And I remember I called Jean, he said, you got him. And I was like, damn. He's like, do it. So that moment where we transitioned from subways, paintings, doing galleries, I watched him do that.
Yeah.
I watched him do that. And if I'm incorrect, when you sold that Frankenstein piece to Robert De Niro.
No, I still have it.
Okay,
Robert
but he
De Niro.
wanted to buy it.
Yes. he did.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, because I'm not off, because I'm studying I'm following my dude, right? So I'm like, if Lee didn't, I'm like kind of like, well, you gotta watch that. Because I refuse to ever sell anything for more than he would sell anything. Like I would not do that, because they deserve so much more than I do. So when I see like someone sell a painting at a price, I kind of go like down. And it's my respect to them. I don't care what the art market is doing. Mr. Dash. I'm sorry. I should have said Mr. Grinch. It's like, you're a hungry guy. Nah, I'm just messing with Jeffrey. I haven't seen him in a long time. Actually, the last time I ran into him was in West Broadway in New York at like 2 o'clock in the morning, buying magazines in the store.
Wow.
10 years ago.
So Toxic lives in Italy and France. And
Yeah.
he has been kind of like, I'm over here doing my thing. And he is still in the middle of a huge move from one country to the next. But when Jeanine and I reached out and said, we want to have a conversation with you and Lee, he was like, what's the date? I'm moving this weekend, which was like, we were talking about like Labor Day weekend. And he said, how's this? Just let me get my move thing going. And we came up with a date, and he is sitting here. So he is processing that while we're having this conversation. And he's also processing decades
I went to Target
information.
yesterday for the first time in my life. And like I said to you before, like
You
I
went to Target?
process all the craziness making jokes. So I walk into Targets and I said to the security dude, I was like, yo, man, if this is an active shooting, I'm in aisle 3.
You don't say that here.
And I just thought I was making a bad joke, but I was actually making a bad joke on purpose, you know? And he just laughed and he looked at me and he goes, I'll see you in aisle 3. I was like, thank you, man.
So let me put, I'm sorry, I want to put things into perspective. So based on what I was saying earlier, by 1978, I had done close to, at that point, maybe about 90 whole subway cars. for a total
That's
of
a
about
lot.
120 by the end
That's a
of it.
lot.
So I felt at the time that I had exhausted everything that I could do with a subway car. So I came above ground in my old neighborhood and I created one of the first full handball wall murals in 1978. That wall,
It's still there.
the wall is still there, but the painting isn't. The painting was there for like 25 years and then, yeah, it lasted a long time.
Respect.
That wall single-handedly changed the whole course of the whole movement, because what happened is that Fred got a hold of the whole kind of like, I want to find Lee. So long story short, he found me by going to a pet store that I was working at in the Lower East Side. So I was handling hamsters in one hand and dealing with art dealers in the other. It was pretty crazy, but later on. But he came and found me in the school that I was working in. I mean, that I was trying to make my studies. And we both by chance got an article in the Village Voice, small little article. And it said that the Fabulous Five, which was a group that I was part of, and Fred was on the outside of that. But this group was now producing murals for $5 a square foot. And based on that wall, using the picture, an image of that wall, Michael Hallman made the phone call to Fred's home, because he had a phone and I did not. And he invited Fred over to Stan Peskett's studio, where then we all got together, and that's how I met Jean. Now that wall itself started the whole conversation that this was now a movement moving on beyond the subways.
Wow.
So.
So you said
I love it.
So you said something, Lee, that I think is really important. One of the reasons why Jeanine and I do these conversations is because there are so many folks who are creatives and they're wanting to figure out kind of how to really truly live their dreams. And for us, our goal is to bring people, or our intention is to bring people to the stage who can speak to you and kind of share their own journey. And so, Lee, you made a comment earlier about how someone told you had to do it 10,000 times. And I almost asked you to repeat it, but I think it's really important to kind of speak about what your journey, both of you, like what your journey has been like over decades, where you decide, first of all, how did you decide that you wanted to be a painter? And then secondly, what is that process like? Just so folks have a chance to understand that.
Well, I've always been intrigued by cinema first, and photography. I've always been drawing since I was 5-6 years old. I stopped drawing and doing small little paintings when I was maybe 8-9 years old, and started sort of growing up on the streets, but still creating things. I would build some of the best double-decker clubhouses underneath the bridges and go-karts out of wood and old. In New York, you can find anything on the streets, new or old, and you can just reutilize it. And then when I saw these trains in the early 70s, I started to say, wow, what was that? What is that? By 74, that's when I jumped in. And then I found my place as an artist again, as a painter. So I took a little hiatus in the streets, still creating things with my hands, but came back to painting when I got into such a painting movement as this. But it has been a struggle. Next year is my 50th anniversary. Not of my age, okay? I'm 63, but I'll be 50 years next year that I picked up the first cans of spray paint.
You determined your journey at 13.
Given to me by the son of a mobster. Swear to God, it's a long, long story, but
We
basically.
want to hear just
Oh my God.
like 2 sentences.
So
you can't drop that.
I
not the
left-
name. No names.
No names to protect the not so innocent. I went to Catholic school and I removed myself from Catholic school in 1970 or so because I was 10 years old. And I said to my mother, I'm leaving this school because I cannot take the constant fighting, fist fighting every day to protect my integrity as a man of color. So there were people there, Italians and Irish, some of them that had checkered passes, had checkered families that were always trying to pummel me. So I learned a lot of my street fighting, my skills around those individuals. So I just had it with the whole struggle, and I left. So I went to public school, which was buck wilder. I mean, the teachers.
But you weren't paying for it.
Yeah, right. I don't even know how. Two things that happened in my life with my mother. I told her I'm leaving Catholic school, and if you don't agree with that, I'm leaving school altogether at 10 years old. And the next time I told her I'm going to paint like this on these subways. If you try and stop me, I'm going to do it even more. Ballsy. I mean, I can't even imagine saying that. My kids telling me that.
They will.
But to her credit, she was my first supporter, but she always stood behind me. And when I went into public school, I met this cat, Beep, his name, and he was one of the few Italian kids that were in school and just as wild as everyone else. His father ran a flower shop in the area that catered to a syndicated funeral home down the block. That flower shop had cans of tint, spray paint to tint the flowers to give them. And when I started painting, when I wanted to paint trains, I said, I don't know how to get paint. I don't know how to acquire it. I didn't have any money. And I'm realizing that years later, I would, start lifting thousands of cans of spray paint. But he says, I got paint for you, Lee, but you can't say anything because my father will literally kill me. And he probably would have done that only because he was doing that to someone that was of color. So he gave me 3 or 4 cans
Of accent.
Of that, yeah, exactly.
See, I had those colors. They don't last long on the
They don't
train.
last long. But he gave me 3 or 4 cans, gold, black, and white. I'll never forget those 3 colors. Gold being my birth color. And I did my first, what I thought was my first masterpiece on a train underneath the Bowery, like, a block away from the new museum. So my whole career started was endorsed loosely by the mob.
Thank you.
That's what you call a classic New York serendipitous moment.
For sure.
Yeah. So I hope yeah. 50 years of that, the struggles. I must say, the roller coaster, my favorite coaster is the Cyclone.
Yes.
All right. You guys go there, ride the
Coney
last car,
Island.
not the first car. The last car will give you a good whiplashing. Woo! All right. But roller coaster rides of one day having oatmeal cookies to have for dinner with 24 cents in my pocket. The oatmeal cookies cost 25 cents at that time. I said, sir, I have, and this is in the 90s. This is after the fall of grace, from grace of, going through these ups and downs in the art world. And I had 24 cents to my name. And I said, sir, I have 24 cents and I'm hungry. Across the street from my studio that I probably owed 5 months rent on. And he said, take it, kid. Don't worry. Just give me the 24 cents. I gave him the 24 cents. I had 3 oatmeal cookies in a packet for dinner. The next day I sold a painting for $10,000. And I was, the very next day I sold a painting for $10,000 and I was at Peter Luger's eating a steak.
That's right.
Oatmeal cookies.
That's right.
That's it.
Peter Luger's is a steakhouse in New York, and they're very mean to you when you go. They're very expensive, and they're very mean to you. So you order something, and they're like, what do you want? And you're like, okay, what kind of vegetables? They're like, for 50 years, we've had the this, we've had the that. Okay, what do you want? And then they don't even give you a knife and you kind of cut it with a spoon. It's an amazing state. Amazing
They
state.
come with that mad attitude too.
It's total attitude.
What do you want? Yeah, we don't have that.
No, cream
Whatever.
corn, you got the cream corn and the tomatoes. And
Yeah.
the jersey, whatever.
It's like gangsters, total gangsters.
And then you're like, oh, here, we'll pay you a lot of money
You're
for
like,
this.
you know, you're cutting the steak shaking because you're shaking from the
Yeah.
family. You're like,
Scared. Toxic.
Huh? What's that?
Tell us about your journey as an artist. When did you know that this was something, a world that you wanted to be in? And give us a little bit about your trajectory.
I didn't actually believe in it at first because I had like a teacher in junior high school when I was applying to like art design and schools like that. She was like, "You shouldn't apply. You'll never be an artist." And
I
was
applied
like,
too, and I
"They didn't get you right."
I failed. I failed the test.
So, like Lee, I went to a Catholic school. I actually got kicked out a lot earlier than you. But that was okay too. And I loved public school because all my peoples was there. So I was just like, okay, cool. I didn't have to clip on tie and the gray little pants and people throwing rocks at me and stuff like that because they're little Catholic schoolboys and stuff. And I didn't think too much about really thinking about making art, but I was drawing. I think when I was 5 years old, there was like a citywide, these little citywide things for like Martin Luther King Day, and I got like a medal and a prize for drawing Martin Luther King in front of a flag or something like that. But by the time I got to junior high schools, my teachers were like, "You are not gonna go to art school." And I was like, "Okay, it's all right." I'll cut it real short. There was a gallery in New York called Martin Lawrence, and this is after I signed with Sidney Janis when I was 16. The teacher from my junior high school invited me back for career day. And she asked me to come and talk to the class. And I was like, "I want to take the whole class on a school trip. I'm going to rent a bus and take you all down to an art gallery." And I took them down to Martin Lawrence gallery. It's like 40 kids. I bought catalogs for all the 40 kids. And I took them back to my junior high school in the Bronx. My old junior high school teacher was like, "I have a company. You want to work for me?" I was like, "You told me." I said, "I'm not going to do this now. I'm going to come tomorrow when it's career day." And in front of her, in front of the class, I said, "She told me I would never be an artist." So I've become immune to that what you can't do thing. Yes. So, because I'm kind of used to no.
Say that again for the people in the back.
If you, for those who don't know, say no to me, and I'm like, "That's cool." That means I don't F with you anymore. I mess with the next people. But your no don't stop it.
That's right.
There's no stopping it. It started. Yeah. And I'm just like here in the presence of like my man's work, and I'm just like, wow. Because we used to sit back and think about these things and say, we're going to sit in these rocking chairs one day and we're going to talk about those 15 girls we all met at the same club that we all dated at one time or another, and be like, "You remember when she was your girlfriend?" It's like, and every time I see, it's really hard for me to see Jean's work because I was in the studio when he was doing it. BW was there and we were getting sent out. Jean would be like, "Yo, I need 100 copies of a drawing," and my dude's just that's family. So we all took care of each other at that point. But just to watch the drive of someone who, when Jean, like you, like us, and I kind of say that, and it kind of messes me up in America. Is like we have to like distinguish ourselves between, like, if somebody said to me a cookie, if somebody said, "Do you want a cookie?" I don't think I go, a green cookie, a blue cookie, a yellow cookie, a red cookie, a purple cookie. I'm like, give me a cookie. So I don't know how, like, when did humans lose humanity? Like, we can't even talk to each other. It's kind of funny because we're all in these little boxes. And then I thought about, like, I come into a place like LA and I'm like, oh my God. But then I came back into America and I'm like, oh my God. And then I look at the newspaper and I go, oh God. and I'm like, I'm getting back on the plane, I'm leaving. But I remember what it was like, and I pushed it so far down That's my drive force. That's what keeps me going, because I remember. See, I don't want to remember, but I can't forget. You know, so that stuff, everything you're watching here, like Jean's paintings, man. Listen, there are biblical references. There are references from the Ansar Allah community in Harlem. There are 5% messages. There are like, you messed me over. We don't eat pork. We don't drink coffee. This is how we were living. Nobody was giving us nothing. I mean, like, we were just straight out like pirates. You know, it's like, I remember someone saying to me, like, you know, the last time a Black artist had a show, we were like, huh? You know, for real. Like, and we were looking at time. We were looking at what happened then, who happened. We were looking at basketball players. We were looking at musicians. We were looking at jazz musicians. We were looking like, they've accomplished so much and achieved, in this sense, so little. And like, why is that? So now we need to change the game. See, same restaurant, new menu. Same restaurant, new menu. We're gonna give you something else to eat. We're gonna give you something else to think about. And, you know, quiet is kept. You just said a whole bunch. See, I'm like, I can't, you know, I'm sitting next to him and I'm a fan, you know. It's like, it's not good that I sit next, because in all the years I know him, he's never said that much. This is the guy who's like, hi. And then you read like an article and he's like reviewing like a restaurant or something. I'm like, and he's driving like these racing cars. And it's like, maybe I could do that.
So Toxic, you came to LA with Jean-Michel and Rammel-Z.
Yeah, I think my microphone dropped somewhere.
No, we hear you.
No, we hear you.
We hear you
cool.
loud.
That guy's
Tell
not
us
gonna come
about-
and touch me anymore.
Nobody's coming
No,
to touch you.
you're good.
Stop that. Don't
I'm
do
sorry.
that.
Tell us about that
You're gonna get us in trouble. Nobody
Wait a minute.
touched you.
I gotta tell you, I can't tell this joke, but it was the most.
I have a question. Did you hear Janine's question? Did you hear Janine's question?
Yes, when I came to
Yeah.
LA with Jean.
Tell us about that trip. Why did you guys come over here? I said a little bit in my intro, but
we were,
give us some more detail.
We were in New York, and I think Jean was out here that week talking to Larry Gagosian, and we were back at Jean's place in Great Jones with Madonna, and we were just all in his studio, and like Jean wouldn't let anybody in, but Madonna knew who to let in, so she let me and two of my friends, and we were just sitting there, and we were playing around with. John had all these instruments and keyboards, and Madonna had bought over like drum machines, and we were just playing there. And we just started playing. And my friend at the end, he said, no, it's not a record, but I wish it was. And John came back from LA and he goes, hey, let's make this record. So we thought about it for a while. We really wanted, like, we had this top 10 list of people we wanted to make a record with, but it didn't happen. But we got in Shango Bush to play with us, and like, you know, Esther Blantz, and, you know, we just got our friends. We just said, okay, it's easier to get our friends together. But there were like, we wanted a couple of people we really liked. We were trying to actually get Sun Ra to do some craziness, and we were like trying to reach out to like Max Roach and you know, a couple other people got mad at me because they were like asking me to do stuff, and I kind of messed up. Yeah, I was really young. You guys have to understand, I was like 15, 16 years old. So, you know, it's not fun having Ornette Coleman scream at you in the street. So I was just like, Ornette, I'm so sorry. He's like, you owe me an album cover. I was like, I'll do it. And we got together, and we did the recordings, and we wanted to work with certain artists, like other MCs we had from the Bronx, and then Crane was there, Ram was there, and like my boy didn't show up because he was uptown blunting out, and he came down too late, and like studio time is money. So we were just like, yo, Crane, you're here, like do this. And that's why when you listen to Bebop, it seems like a fight, because there was nothing written down. It was like, you go, and we just recorded it. And when we finished it, Larry, it's really funny because Run DMC did that record. It was like Larry put us in the back of the Cadillac. The chauffeur drove off and we never came back. Well, Larry Gagosian did that to us. And next day we were like in Venice Beach and we were just like, we recorded the album and we came to LA.
Wow. Okay. And what happened when you got here?
We came to LA. I spent a lot of time in bathrooms waiting for rum and cokes. And, but, you know, we painted that wall in Venice Beach. We actually went around tagging up in Venice Beach. We played at the Rhythm Lounge, which EW did, and Matt Dyke, who actually afterwards opened Delicious Vinyl, was part of that crew. Solomon filmed all of that. Hey, Mr. Estes. He filmed us. And it was the craziest moment. It was a really beautiful moment, but we were actually really shocked when we went to Mann's Chinese Theater and I was running around looking for black people. See, because that's just me, right? So I'm like on the floor, like, where's that? I get that don't fit. And you know, we actually went back home. We started talking about it, and we were like, our Teddy Granger, who actually played Isaac on the Love Boat, came to Jean-Michel's show, and he bought the first two paintings from Larry Gagosian. So we were just like, Love Boat. It's Love Boat, motherfucker. It's Love Boat. And we that was like the first thing that happened where we were like, kind of like, this is really crazy. Because here we are in LA and I'm seeing my folk, but I'm not seeing my folk. And we were just like, how do we come from New York? And none of us were like, Jean was 21, I think. I was 16. Ram was like 20, 21. And we're like, how did we come out here and we're like the most famous black people in California?
That's such a
Like, how'd you do that? What's your question? No, I guess you look back at that. It's all documented. It's like, 83. Thank you.
I'm born in 81, so I'm like, oh, I'm in 81.
No, you little test tube baby said that.
So, you
Hold tight.
both
Hold tight.
of you have been, you've made a career in art. And
I'm sorry.
why are you sorry?
Because like every once in a
I
while,
love you.
they've been control. Actually,
Not
they
controlling, managing.
No, managing.
Is he gonna come? Is he showing up? Has anyone spoken to him? Is he okay? Let him yell. It's 40 years. Let him get it out. But he's here.
I got issues.
But you're
I
here.
got issues.
But you're here. I have a question. I have a question.
Oh, man.
So,
Seriously.
both
Sorry.
of you have been, you've made a career out of your passion, out of your dream, out of your art. If you can think about 1, 2, or 3 things that you learned that could be of help to the community that's coming up around you.
If I could think, can you hear me?
We can always hear
if the
you.
microphone's
Is his mic on?
Yeah. My mic is like.
His.
Are you gonna
Let's
come
do that.
touch me
Okay.
again?
We'll just. I was gonna
Take
say, I
it
can
to
fully.
the bathroom.
He's getting all
Little rum and
technical.
coke.
He's about to get us canceled. Lee, why don't you
I
start?
told you that before, right? I said, here you go. He's getting all
I think if there's anything that I can relate to
Yes.
younger generations
Absolutely.
coming up,
Or even folks who, because here's the thing, when you see, sometimes we see a person and they're closer to our age and you know that it's a person that has something inside of them that they've never let out. So sometimes it's not all about like the younger generation. It's just people who haven't done the 10,000, the repetition of 10,000 times, or who haven't spent decades, both of you, doing this thing that you love.
Mhm.
So sometimes I think we get so caught up in age. I know a lot of folk in their 50s who are like, I could have been a.
Yeah.
Let's talk to everybody.
It's a good question.
Someone
I
said
mean-
to me once, I'm sorry.
No.
Because I had that free thought. Someone said to me once, like, if it was really easy, everyone can do it, and it's not worth your while to even try. So it's like if you I mean, nothing's easy. It's kind of funny because you meet these artists and everybody wants to be famous really fast. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm thinking like, people slept on my brother for like 30 years. They slept on my brother. I kept telling them, I was like, did you see Jean's work? Did you see his work? Did you see his work?
But you know, I mean,
You all worked.
to that, I'm glad you said that because
You
if it
worked.
was easy, there is no blueprint. There,
Yeah,
there really
yeah.
isn't. Because we're all sort of isometric. You know, we're not really the same shapes, forms, or anything. And we have
that
there's
community that you
have
built.
community. You have
Yeah.
a community, but you have eyesight and you have intuition and you have what I call the sense of vibes in the room. It's not about ideas; it's about the vibe. And art to me has always been something about revealing and healing. And I have my own demons. I've seen stuff, I've heard stuff, I've felt stuff that comes out of my work in so many different ways. I stay pure to my work in the studio without referencing art history around me or even anything outside my studio. I have to really incubate and negotiate with my work in the studio and feel good about it before it even goes out into the public. So I think that being true and pure to yourself, even if it doesn't happen in your lifetime, some artists do incredible work some never discovered in their living years. But what really survives is the legacy, the work. The work is the legacy. And I've always said empires come up and down, and what survives is the art. And the what happened in New York and what's happening again, I would say in this time of struggle is that we're probably going to witness another creative and cultural powder keg.
Yeah.
Where
It's coming.
people come together and have that discussion, that discourse, and maybe even some really harsh exchanges. But that's good because that's what art is about. It's about the exchange rate in art is always kind of difficult to deal with. But sometimes you come off with some really great work that's relevant. It's transitional. It's transformative. It goes beyond you. It goes beyond fame and fortune. I mean, I sort of got my teeth. I ground my teeth in the making of the Art Star in the early 80s. And I think we just wanted to make art. All these different forces came together and they wanted to just like create art. At the night of that party at Canal Zone, Jean said to Michael Holman, "Hey, you want to start a band?" And Michael Holman said, "Yeah, let's just do it." It was just one of those like spontaneous moments that, yeah, let's not be so apprehensive and maybe too calculating. Let's just be a little bit natural and just work with what you feel, the vibe in the room. You just got to know how to read the vibe in the room, the temperature in the room. Yeah. So I hope I answered that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What did you learn, sir?
What did I learn? About what?
What?
I'm getting old. I didn't hear that.
You remember
Just
a lot
like
of names.
are there any,
I'm telling you.
you've been an artist for your entire life and
Almost.
you've done it for a long time and you're a professional. This is your thing.
Well,
So what have you learned that you can share?
What I've learned is that like the art market changes like any other, like those tendencies like Lee was just talking about, like you're hot, then you're not. And it's not why you paint. You paint because it's like, I paint because it's cheaper than going to a psychiatrist every week. Like, that's my therapy. Like, I need to paint and make enough money to pay a psychiatrist. But I'm joking, y'all. I'm joking. But no, it's my therapy. It's the thing I do to cope with like a lot of things I deal with, like in life. And what I've learned about the business is that business is not, it's not the most important to me. What's the most important to me is being able to make and express my feelings. And I'm actually working out all these things all these years. Like, and it might come through a color, it might come through another form or whatever, but it's like a constant, it's like I'm constantly trying to become a better artist, a better person, a better human being. It's like that, you know, I don't know when someone goes like, I'm done, I did it. You know, it's like, wow, how'd you do that?
And you're also fighting against like the notion that black art is not a high art.
Oh yeah.
You know,
oh,
and
yeah.
the fact that, I mean,
You know,
right?
seriously.
That's a struggle.
Seriously.
That's a
Seriously.
struggle
I know.
on its own. So
Yeah, we don't talk about it much because we never have to talk about it because it's understood.
Right.
But I know because, you know, my grandmother's name is Quiñones. His name is Quiñones, and I'm my father's from Trinidad. My mother's from Puerto Rico.
So we're for Puerto
Yeah,
Ricans sitting
we're
up here,
like
just so you
Puerto
know.
Ricans. Boricua on the set, you know, Boricua on the set. But you know, it's like
Bonchinchano, bonchinchano.
Bochinchero. Okay.
It's gossiping.
It's like gossiping. So we were talking about that, but I never ever spoke to like Jean or Ram or A1. We're a black artist. You know, it's a funny thing. It's like, so I'll just give you an example. You have an artist who comes along who bases his whole career, his style on graffiti art. And at one point he decides that, well, he's over graffiti and now he's a contemporary artist. How'd you do that? And I don't want to say no names, but there's so many. And it's like, wow, how'd you do that? I'm still trying to figure out, like, you used to paint walls, never painted a train. Your first paintings were all tags. You went through that and then you jumped over us. And I can only go, oh shit, it's because I'm black. Is it my color? You know, I'm like, you know, like what happened there? And that jump, you know what I'm saying? That jump is crazy because you start thinking about exhibitions and they start putting money in people's faces and stuff like that. And I can't say, Billie Holiday said this really beautiful thing. It's like, God bless the child as God his own. My place is not to judge what you do. I can like it or not like it. Do I support it? That's another question. You can do what you want. That's your business, you know? But now we're all swimming in the same swimming pool. So there's that big shark, there's the killer whale, there's the little plankton. You have you just think about it and it's like, why is that? And when I learned about all the black artists who were doing murals in the 1960s and 70s in Los Angeles and in California, and they disappeared. So in the 1980s, when I had David Hammonds reach out to me, Mel Edwards reach out to me, and they reached out to me and Jean and us, and they were like, little brother, this is what you're getting into. We were like, we don't care. We go to parties. We're at Max. We're doing that. And then it hits you. And it hits you and you go, wow. How many people know who Dial is? Anybody know Dial? Dial? Come on, Dial.
All the painter?
Yeah.
Oh, Doll.
Dial. His name is Dial.
T-A-H-M. Just
D-I, yeah. You know Dial? Dial was like in New Orleans doing drawings on cardboard, selling them in the street. You can go in any museum right now and you'll find those paintings, find those cardboard drawings. Jacob Lawrence, you guys know who Jacob Lawrence is? You know what I mean? So that whole period, there's this whole period between 1950 and it's like colored people became artists when they did graffiti. That's like, it's like, that's it. No, there's like these whole periods that they jumped over. Like, and it's like, when you start looking back, so you have to understand like where I'm at today has been positioned by you. Thanks to you, I'm here today. I'll never forget that. But that's between me and you, and I'm not buying you anything. Leave that alone. Rice and beans. So, once you start looking back as far as the art world is concerned, and we were looking at these things, Jean, we got really attuned to that because we sort of forget like how fragile it was, like looking at basketball players when you were reading Jet magazine and they'd be like, he's in Chicago living in the back of his car. Or you picked up Ebony and you read about this musician who was a Supreme and she died on, well, you start paying attention to that. And you go, how do you go from here to there? What did you do wrong? Like, what happened and then you have to understand that game because all the games are different. But how do you go from that to that? And who controls that position? Is it based on your worth, your work, your ethic? You know what I mean? So you question all of that. And as far as I'm concerned, like, I don't have a gallery. See, because that 50% that I pay someone else, it's called the internet right now. That's why Prince shut down record industries. So if I can sell a painting on my website from my studio and I get 100%, Jesus, sorry, I gotta just think about this.
Are you?
Why should you do it? It's like, I'm gonna give you half a chicken and you're gonna pay for a whole chicken? I want the whole fucking chicken. I want the whole chicken. I'm just sorry. You know,
It's okay.
I do have to.
this is my whole take on that whole thing that just happened. You know, it's like I sat there and I used to sit there with like Prince and Chuck D when they were going through that whole thing about like, we don't want to be on the internet, we don't want to do that, we want to take our names back, we want to own the masters. Mm-hmm. When we're painters, I am the master. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, why am I giving you 50%? Like, I'm buying a sandwich, you can get half. But when you buy a sandwich, I get nothing. So I had to regroup, you know? So it's been like about 10, 15 years. I learned this from your brother. It's like, and I learned this from Ron Carter and the Jazz. They were like, yo, if you can't do it for yourself, nobody's gonna do it for you.
That's true.
I am my gallery.
That's right.
I am my artist. So for any of you young people, if I can say anything to you, yo, man, you're worth more than 50%.
But you know, to that, I mean, I have to say, in
Oh, I did. I just messed up because I asked to do a show with him.
Okay, let's get to that later.
so
I just messed up.
To that, I want to say that, you know, perhaps there's been many victims in this whole, if you want to call it a game. I don't like calling it a game.
No, it's not a game.
But I know some people do. I'm like, this
No, a
is
game is
not
not a game. Life is not a game.
But, you know, for a long time, things have been maybe possibly stale, maybe a little dusty and crusty. And I think the art world positioned itself to be at this, you know, this square table. But at one point, but I think in recent times, there has been a shift, seismic shift, to make that table round, to make people of all colors be at that table. And you know, I just went to see my man Derek Adams' show today at Gagosian. Amazing knockout show. I think his work is just as strong there as it would be in his studio or on the street or anywhere. And I think someone taking a leap of faith with him, a gallerist, it enables people to have that exchange again and not alienate, because when art starts to alienate, even in the business sense, then we are in trouble. Because you know, this movement, I really believe, comes from a place of building your foundation up, creating art in a place that wasn't expected to have art by people that weren't expected to understand art.
Or make art.
Or even collect art. And I think that I've worked with galleries since 1979. And I've worked with some bad galleries. And I've worked with some great galleries. And they've done major things for me so that I can take that you know, take that ball and make it bigger, make it into a bigger snowball. Like David Hammond said, you know. But,
David Hammond's, Do you guys know David Hammonds? He was selling snowballs in New York.
In New York
front of
in the
him-
winter.
In the wintertime in front of an exhibition.
Yeah.
He had a stand and he was selling snowballs, and then he sold gold-plated chicken wings on gold chains. And when he had a show at the Metropolitan, he had a show. Yeah, it was he had a show at the Museum of Natural History, and he made them cover the statues outside that had the slave and the Indian walking the pilgrim, into the great America. He had them covered, and then you walked inside, and they had like 40 ounces of Old English, and they were playing the Funkadelics, and you just gotta love it. You just gotta love it. You just gotta love. If you get it, you get it. But those all inspirings and.
So what I'm getting at is that there is a shift, and there is a sense of hope, if you want to call it. That everyone is now at that table, and they don't feel an edge of that squareness. They feel roundness. And the world is round, and that's why karma is around, right? Karma goes around, so does the world. And I think that if you stick to your guns, I'm looking at celebrated artists of color now that are coming up and creating work that is very relevant and creating that dialogue that all of us can kind of dive into, even people that were excluding us, that they can actually find something in there, because that's the great experiment of life. And art kind of reveals that, and it enables us to heal at the same time. There is going to be, and art is subjective. People don't like, they don't like certain works. It doesn't mean that they hate all art. They're just not feeling that piece of work. I think that there's a time now that people are enabling other people to have that platform. I saw a wonderful show at Jeffrey's, Bisa Butler. She made an amazing presentation.
Yeah.
I mean, it blew me away to see that. And I
She's
was
from
so
our
proud for
hometown,
her.
our second hometown after Brooklyn.
Leslie Hewitt, Hank Willis Thomas. I mean, William Cordova. I mean, all these amazing painters that are now having this powerful dialogue in their work, or this powerful vibe that the human spirit, no matter who you are, can feel it. And if you want to deny it, that's your, misery will be refunded at the door.
Wow. Okay, so I love you. We are a little over time, but I just wanted to end with two things. First, I wanted to commend Jeffrey.
I was going to say that.
So Jeffrey took a chance. I believe it was 2019 when you handed your gallery over to two Black curators, AJ Gerard, and you allowed him to represent, I think it was about 30 different emerging artists of color. And you're probably one of the only ones who have done that, and you did it first.
That's right.
So I want to say thank you to you for that. You always set the pace. I appreciate that.
I appreciate. I just want to say sorry too.
You can say sorry to him after.
I said.
You can say sorry to him after.
You don't even have to.
Okay.
They can handle it. They can handle it. Listen,
The other thing,
they're both
in
smiling.
closing, I'd love for you two to say, where can we see your work? What exhibitions are coming? What websites? Where can we see your work?
I think I just released like 2 paintings to like these girls I were talking. They like graduated from art school like 10 years ago, and we were talking like 10 years ago about like they wanted to do a virtual gallery on the internet and stuff like that. And it took us 10 years to figure it out. And I finally just released 2 paintings to them.
And where can we see that?
Well, it'll be up this week. I'll send it to you and stuff like that. And I'm doing a show like next year in Paris. So I'm taking my time.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm not doing anything before I finish paintings.
Well, so like I said, next year, 2024 is my 50th anniversary. So my first monograph book of my 10 greatest hits.
That's right.
Is going to be released in the spring. Damiani Press in Italy is going to be publishing it, and it's going to be distributed through DAP in several countries. Coinciding with that, I'm planning some shows in New York. I'm planning a show here in Los Angeles with Charlie James, which is sitting here in Everett. That will be in the spring of 2024, and several shows after that. Also working on a documentary that's being shot now.
Okay, you can stop.
And furthermore,
I like you.
And he's currently in a group show in Lisbon.
In Lisbon.
And it is there until December 3rd.
Yeah, it's my dude. You don't do a lot of shows, but when you do shows, they fucking kick ass. I like.
Thank you.
And from your first, I've been at like some of his first shows, and I have his first catalog, 1979. So I actually really appreciate and I always give you props.
Thank you.
Props.